There are moments in House of the Dragon that leave you speechless because of the scale of the battles. And then there are moments that haunt you because almost nothing happens at all. The final 10 minutes of episode 2 belong to the second category. On the surface, this scene is simple. King's Landing has fallen. The Blacks have won. The woman who spent her entire life fighting for the Iron Throne is finally standing just a few steps away from it. This should have been the happiest moment of Rhaenyra's life. But look closely at her face. There is no relief. There is no satisfaction. There isn't even a sense of victory. Instead, we see grief, hesitation, exhaustion, and a woman who looks like she has already lost everything before claiming the one thing she has always wanted. And that is why these final minutes are so brilliant. Because this isn't a story about a queen finally taking her throne. It's the story of what the throne demanded in return. To understand why Rhaenyra hesitates throughout this sequence, we first need to remember the emotional state she is in before she ever enters the throne room. She has just lost Jacaerys. For Rhaenyra, this isn't simply the death of an heir. It's the loss of a son, a future king, and another piece of the family she has watched crumble ever since this war began. Every victory from this point onward is permanently stained by that grief. No castle she captures, no army she defeats, and not even the Iron Throne itself can erase what has already been taken from her. That's why, when she walks through the Red Keep, she doesn't carry herself like a conqueror. She carries herself like a grieving mother who has been forced to keep moving because history refuses to wait for her to mourn. And then Daemon brings Otto Hightower before her. At first glance, this looks like exactly what we would expect from Daemon. Capture the enemy, drag him before the queen, deliver justice. But something immediately feels unusual. Daemon doesn't execute Otto. In fact, he doesn't even attempt to. This is the same Daemon Targaryen who has never been known for patience or mercy. Throughout his life, he has solved countless problems with a sword, long before anyone else had the chance to speak. If anyone in this room is capable of ending Otto's life without a second thought, it's Daemon. Yet he doesn't. Instead, he places Otto before Rhaenyra and waits. That silence is incredibly important, because in that single decision, Daemon changes the meaning of the entire scene. This is no longer about eliminating one of the architects of the Green Cause. It becomes about Rhaenyra, about what kind of queen she is willing to become. Daemon understands something that Rhaenyra herself may not fully realize yet. If he kills Otto, then it is simply another victory on the battlefield. Another enemy removed from the board. But if Rhaenyra orders the execution herself, something far more significant happens. She stops acting as a grieving mother, reacting to a loss. She starts acting as the ruler, whose decisions will shape the future of the realm. And those are two very different people. That is why Daemon remains still. He isn't testing her courage. He isn't asking for permission. He's forcing her to carry the burden that comes with wearing the crown. Because some choices cannot be made by a husband. Some choices can only be made by a queen. And before we can understand why Rhaenyra struggles so deeply with that decision, we first need to understand the man standing before her. Because Otto Hightower was never just another enemy. Long before he became the face of the Greens, he was one of the very people who helped shape Rhaenyra's path to the Iron Throne. To truly understand why Rhaenyra hesitates, we have to look beyond the throne room and revisit the complicated history she shares with Otto Hightower. Because standing before her is not just the hand of the king who supported Aegon's claim. Standing before her is a man who, in many ways, helped shape both her rise and her downfall. That contradiction is what makes this moment so powerful. When we first meet Otto Hightower, he isn't obsessed with destroying Rhaenyra. His greatest concern is Daemon Targaryen. Otto sees Daemon as unpredictable, impulsive, and dangerously unsuitable to inherit the Seven Kingdoms. From his perspective, allowing Daemon anywhere near the Iron Throne would place the realm at enormous risk. That is why Otto repeatedly urges Viserys to name Rhaenyra as his heir. It's easy to forget that today, because later seasons are dominated by the conflict between the Blacks and the Greens. But at one point, Otto was one of the strongest voices, arguing that Rhaenyra should succeed her father. Of course, this wasn't because he saw her as the perfect ruler, or because he loved her like a daughter. It was a political calculation. Between Daemon and Rhaenyra, Otto believed Rhaenyra was the safer choice for the realm. Ironically, the very man standing before Rhaenyra helped place her on the path that eventually led to this throne room. But Otto Hightower was never a simple man. If helping establish Rhaenyra as heir was one side of his character, the other side emerged after Queen Aemma's death. Otto sent Alicent to comfort the grieving Viserys. Some see that as cold political manipulation. Others see it as a father recognizing an opportunity that could secure his family's future for generations. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. That is what makes Otto such a compelling character. His ambition and his love for his family are so deeply intertwined that separating one from the other becomes almost impossible. Was he ambitious? Absolutely. Did he want House Hightower to stand at the center of power? Without question. But once Alicent became queen and gave birth to children, Otto's political ambitions became inseparable from his role as a father and grandfather. From that moment onward, every political decision also became a family decision. If Rhaenyra inherited the throne, what would happen to Alicent? Whether those fears were justified or not is something fans will continue to debate. But from Otto's perspective, securing Aegon's claim wasn't simply about ambition anymore. It was about ensuring that his daughter and grandchildren survived in a world where succession disputes often ended in bloodshed. That doesn't excuse everything Otto did. He manipulated the court. He strengthened the Green faction. He played the game of politics better than almost anyone around him. And many of the divisions that eventually exploded into civil war can be traced back to choices he either made or encouraged. In many ways, Otto helped build the very conflict that consumed both families. That is why reducing him to either a hero or a villain completely misses the point. He was a brilliant statesman, a ruthless politician, a loving father, a calculating hand, a man capable of genuine concern and extraordinary manipulation at the same time. All of those things are true, and perhaps that is why Rhaenyra doesn't immediately raise her sword. Because despite everything that has happened, she knows exactly who Otto is. Not just the enemy who opposed her claim, not just the architect of Aegon's coronation, but also the man who once argued that she should become heir in the first place. History has brought both of them to a place neither could have imagined years earlier. And then we return to the present. Otto stands before the woman whose destiny he unknowingly helped create. Rhaenyra looks at him. She doesn't rush. She doesn't lash out in anger. She hesitates. Some viewers may interpret that hesitation as weakness. I think it's exactly the opposite. Her hesitation proves that compassion has not completely disappeared from her. She understands what this execution means. This is not another battlefield death where swords clash and chaos decides the outcome. This is deliberate, personal, final. Daemon waits. He says nothing because there is nothing left to say. The burden belongs to Rhaenyra alone. This is the lesson he has been forcing upon her ever since Otto was brought into the room. Queens don't simply inherit power. They inherit responsibility. And responsibility often demands choices that no one truly wants to make. Rhaenyra realizes that if she steps back now, someone else will make the decision for her. Perhaps Daemon, perhaps another loyal supporter. But then it wouldn't be her justice. It wouldn't be her reign. A ruler cannot forever separate herself from the hardest decisions and still expect others to believe in her authority. So after one final moment of hesitation, Rhaenyra accepts the burden. She takes the sword that Daemon gave her. Otto waits for her to strike, also in a way to test if she can really do the hard thing. She is the queen, but it was her first time taking someone's life in her own hand. She strikes, but at the first stroke, his head doesn't fall. And that was a very, very embarrassing moment for her, because everyone was watching that. Everyone in the throne room was waiting for that moment, but that didn't arrive at the first stroke. That moment made this even more difficult for her, which it already was. But she regains her courage, and this time, with a second stroke, Otto Hightower's story comes to an end. But the true tragedy of the scene isn't Otto's death. It's Rhaenyra's transformation. The woman who once believed the Iron Throne was a symbol of destiny now understands that every step toward it demands a sacrifice. This execution is not presented as a moment of triumph. There are no cheers. No celebration, only silence. Because everyone in that room understands that something much greater than Otto Hightower has just died. The last part of Rhaenyra that still hoped she could become queen without carrying the unbearable weight of taking a life in cold judgment has disappeared forever. The sword falls. Otto's chapter ends, and Rhaenyra's next chapter begins. The moment Otto's execution ends, the episode does something fascinating. It doesn't rush towards celebration. There are no triumphant speeches, no victorious music swelling in the background. No cheering soldiers proclaiming the arrival of a new queen. Instead, the story slows down, almost as if it wants the audience to sit with the weight of what has just happened. And that's exactly what makes this sequence so powerful. Because for Rhaenyra, the hardest part wasn't winning King's Landing. The hardest part begins after she has won. As she starts walking toward the Iron Throne, the camera lingers on every step. The pace becomes almost painfully slow, forcing us to notice details we might otherwise ignore. The blood beneath her feet. The silence surrounding her, the emptiness of the throne room. This isn't framed like the triumphant return of a rightful ruler. It feels more like someone walking through the ruins of everything that brought her here. Blood has always carried powerful symbolism in House of the Dragon. It represents family, legacy, sacrifice, and the terrible price of power. Here, those meanings seem to merge into a single image. Every step Rhaenyra takes reminds us that her victory was purchased with loss. She has lost her son. She has lost countless loyal supporters. She has ordered the execution of Otto Hightower, a man whose life had been intertwined with her own political journey for decades. Even the enemies she defeats are people she once knew. There are no strangers left in this war, only former family, former friends, former allies. That is why this walk feels less like a coronation and more like a funeral procession. The destination may be the Iron Throne, but emotionally, Rhaenyra is walking through a graveyard built by the ambitions of both sides. This is where the brilliance of the direction really shines. The episode trusts visual storytelling. No one needs to explain what Rhaenyra is feeling because her body language says everything. Her shoulders carry exhaustion. Her Her movements lack confidence. There is no excitement in her eyes. Only the quiet acceptance of someone who understands that the dream she chased her entire life can never again be separated from the people she has lost along the way. That brings us to the Iron Throne itself. For years, this throne has existed as the ultimate symbol of power in Westeros. Kings have fought wars to possess it. Families have destroyed themselves trying to protect it. For the young Rhaenyra we met at the beginning of this story, the Iron Throne represented purpose. It represented her father's trust. It represented the future she believed had been promised to her. But dreams have a strange way of changing once they become reality. When Rhaenyra finally stands before the throne, there is no look of satisfaction on her face. Instead, there is hesitation, almost as if she is seeing it for the first time, not as an object to be won, but as a burden to be carried. That change in perspective is one of the most important transformations in the entire episode. Earlier in her life, Rhaenyra believed that becoming queen would solve her problems. Now she realizes becoming queen only changes the nature of those problems. The throne cannot give her Jace back. It cannot repair the years stolen by war. It cannot undo the betrayals, the deaths, or the sacrifices that made this moment possible. It simply asks one more question. Are you willing to carry all of it? Rhaenyra struggles as she finally sits upon the Iron Throne. Whether you interpret her pain as physical, emotional, or symbolic, the scene communicates something incredibly important. The throne doesn't feel like victory. It feels heavy. For years, people have argued about whether the Iron Throne somehow judges those who sit upon it. Whether it accepts certain rulers or rejects others has become one of the great myths surrounding Westeros. But interestingly, the episode doesn't require us to answer that question, because regardless of mythology, the emotional truth remains exactly the same. The pain we see on Rhaenyra's face isn't simply about a chair made of swords. It's about the invisible weight of everything she now carries. She is no longer just a daughter trying to honor her father's wishes. She is no longer just a mother grieving her son. She is no longer just a claimant fighting for what she believes is hers. She is now the queen. And queens don't have the luxury of separating personal grief from public duty. That realization hurts far more than any blade ever could. In many ways, this is the true coronation of Rhaenyra Targaryen. Not the moment she reaches the throne, not even the moment she sits upon it, but the moment she understands exactly what it has cost. The Iron Throne has not changed. Rhaenyra has. She entered the throne room believing she was there to reclaim what had always belonged to her. She sits upon the throne, realizing that nothing truly belongs to anyone without demanding something in return. And perhaps that is the cruelest truth the episode reveals. The closer Rhaenyra comes to the dream she carried since childhood, the further she drifts from the woman who first dreamed it. By the time she finally becomes queen, victory itself no longer feels victorious. It feels like survival. And before Rhaenyra can even begin to process what that means, one final person walks into the throne room, someone whose presence will remind her that every choice she has made carries consequences far beyond the Iron Throne itself. Just when it feels like the episode has already said everything it wants to say, one final scene quietly changes the meaning of everything that came before. Otto Hightower enters the throne room with Helaena. There are no dramatic speeches, no desperate arguments, no grand confrontation between two lifelong rivals. Instead, the episode once again trusts silence. Alicent's eyes immediately find her father, Otto Hightower, the man who had spent decades navigating the dangerous politics of King's Landing. The man who outplayed kings, manipulated councils, and helped shape the future of the realm, now lies lifeless before her. But in that moment, Alicent doesn't see the former hand of the king. She sees her father. And that distinction changes everything. Throughout the Dance of the Dragons, both sides have spoken endlessly about duty, succession, prophecy, justice, and the rightful claim to the Iron Throne. Politics has dominated almost every conversation. Yet grief has a way of stripping away politics. Standing before Otto's body, Alicent isn't thinking about councils or alliances. She's mourning the man who raised her. The man who, despite all of his flaws, spent his entire life trying to secure a future for his family. That doesn't erase the damage Otto caused. He manipulated Viserys' court. He planted the seeds that divided the realm. He built the Green faction piece by piece. His ambition helped create the very war that now consumes Westeros. And because of those choices, his execution feels deserved from Rhaenyra's perspective. She isn't executing an innocent man. She is passing judgment on one of the principal architects of the conflict that stole her son, her peace, and nearly her birthright. But that truth can exist alongside another truth. To Alicent, Otto wasn't a political mastermind first. He was family. That is what makes this moment tragic, instead of simply satisfying. And there is another heartbreaking layer hidden beneath this scene. Not long before the fall of King's Landing, Alicent had reached out to Rhaenyra in one final attempt to prevent even more bloodshed. She understood that the war had already taken too much from both sides. She knew the city would eventually fall. In that conversation, she was prepared to accept Rhaenyra's claim to the Iron Throne, asking only for one exception: Aegon. Whether that request was fair or realistic is a different discussion. What matters is that Alicent believed there was still a fragile understanding between them. A final thread connecting two women who had once been inseparable as children. But when Alicent sees Otto's body lying in the throne room, that thread snaps. From her perspective, Rhaenyra has broken the last promise between them. For Rhaenyra, executing Otto was the decision of a queen. For Alicent, it is the betrayal of a friend. Neither woman is entirely wrong, and that is exactly why this scene hurts so much. The tragedy of House of the Dragon has never been about good people fighting evil people. It has always been about good intentions colliding with impossible choices. Rhaenyra believes she has delivered justice. Alicent believes she has lost her father because of someone she once loved like a sister. Both emotions can exist at the same time. By the end of these final 10 minutes, every relationship that once defined Rhaenyra has reached its breaking point. Jace's death leaves her carrying unimaginable grief. Daemon forces her to embrace the burden of queenship instead of hiding behind others. Otto's execution closes one of the longest and most complicated political relationships of her life. The Iron Throne offers no celebration, only the crushing weight of everything she sacrificed to reach it. And Alicent's silent heartbreak becomes the mirror that reflects the true cost of Rhaenyra's transformation. That is why I believe these final moments are among the finest scenes House of the Dragon has ever produced. On paper, it looks like a queen captures her capital, executes her enemy, and claims the Iron Throne. But beneath the surface, it tells a far more devastating story. A grieving mother becomes a queen. A brilliant statesman meets the consequences of a lifetime of political choices. A lifelong friendship finally collapses under the weight of war. And a dream that began with a young princess standing before the Iron Throne ends with a queen realizing that the throne was never the reward, it was the price. Because in the end, Rhaenyra did win the Iron Throne. But by the time she finally sat upon it, she had already lost the daughter, the friend, the mother, and the woman she once was. Only the queen remained.